Talk Shoes. Recorded live.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Travis and Vic's Drunken Horror Adventures. I'm Travis. I'm joined by Blake, back with us after a 1-week hiatus. It's too weird not having you on the show anymore, isn't it? I mean, like, we've gone months with you being on the show, like almost every show.
That's true, you know, and I'm actually thinking about doing something special during my convention. I want to stream a little bit of the signing live so you guys can say hi to everybody and take a little bit of the Travis and Vic show on the road, you know, and let you guys, and I'm going to talk you guys up too because I get to do a panel. I'm actually going to get to do a really big panel. So I'm going to talk about podcasting and talk about meeting you gents and how you guys helped my career, you know, spread the word about the books and stuff. You guys have been super great to me, and I'm always happy to help, especially when it comes to movies. Horror movies, that's my shit, man, you know?
We all kind of like that a little bit. You know, you like horror? I like horror. I think we should talk about a little bit of horror tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a horrific idea. Let's do it.
You know, the fun thing is I don't get to talk horror enough in my regular everyday life because whenever I bring it up to my wife or I bring it up to anybody else, they just kind of look at me like I've got two heads. Even the wife who's used to all my horror shit, you know, she's not big into it. She's more into, like, fantasy and a little bit of sci-fi maybe. And so when I bring up horror, she just, like, appeases me, I think. But, yeah, I mean, it's always good to have this release every week on the show. And the fun thing for us is we get to have maybe not so much a debate, but we get to put our list out there once a month for 1 year of horror. And, well, it started out with pre-1960s and then or 1970s, pre-1970s, and then we did the 1970s decade, and then we've gone year by year. We went 1980, 1981, and that brings us to 1982. But, you know, this is year 3 of the Friday the 13th franchise, so you've got a lot of copycats of that out there, but not as many as maybe 81 I felt like had. Am I wrong, or did you notice that and kind of look at it?
There was, you know, no shortage of disfigured slashers going after people at camp. There was no shortage of that.
Right. But I tell you, 81 was the biggest, I mean, even if it wasn't intentional, but the biggest copycat slasher year that I've seen so far. But, you know, we're only 3 years into the Friday the 13th franchise, so, yeah, it makes sense that we are where we are now. So, you know, 1982 now, and Vic is probably dead because I tried to message him and see if he was dead, and he hasn't responded yet. I assume he's working.
He'll pop in at some point. He loves this show too much. I've heard him do the show on the job. It doesn't surprise him.
Yep. And I think it's like right at their closing time there, so he'll probably pop in when he can. He's just now flying back from New Jersey. He spent the weekend in New Jersey watching Tournament of Survival, kind of like King of the Death matches that we watched a few weeks ago. Vic calls it the Summer of Blood. Vic said he's going to call in like 15 minutes. So let's babble a little bit till we get into our list. What do you think?
Well, you know, I was thinking of the wrestling thing, man. I'm sure you heard about Rockin' Rebel.
Yeah, that was fucked up, wasn't it? And that's something we're going to cover a little bit more next week. We got a friend who's in the wrestling business. He was actually on Raw a couple weeks ago. And we're going to kind of cover Rockin' Rebel, Chris Benoit, and the wrestling business next week because
I would love to join for that if you'll have me. I really would.
Feel free. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
we
God.
did the Chris Benoit 10-year anniversary, I think last year. Yeah, it was last year. And then this year we're going to kind of touch on it again, but we're going to touch on Rockin' Rebel too because, I mean, shit, there's always something horrific going on in wrestling. It's just the business. But, I mean, I've always felt like, and Blake, you can speak to this, that rock and roll was kind of that way, and so was stand-up comedy. But these are just suicides in rock and roll and stand-up comedy, not so much murders, you know?
That's true. I mean, of course, you know, you did have some murder, obviously, with Marvin Gaye's father, you know, which, I mean, depending on who you speak to, self-defense, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I will speak to that. Growing up as a child of the 80s and 90s and, you know, early 2000s and having a professional music career, I will say that the Kurt Cobain story, the Lane Staley story, Andrew Wood, Mia Zapata, you know, her rape and murder, the music industry has been permeated with tragedy since the very, very beginning But especially in those decades, we see a lot of it, and I think it just speaks to not even the music, but just the lifestyle. And it's the same with professional wrestling. The bumps, people like to say that it's not, dangerous. It's not this and that. It may be prescripted. You get into that whole argument of whether it's fake or not. Whatever. That notwithstanding, it is very much a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous activity, whether it's scripted or not. Accidents happen, bumps. Too many chair shots, too many tacks, too many falls, and it's like football players. Some of those injuries don't manifest themselves until way later, and by that point, it's too late and they've gone untreated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the concussion issues and everything else, and this is one of those. Again, we'll cover it more next week, but just since we're on the subject, it's one of those businesses where you don't get paid, if you're not working. Maybe in the WWE, but on the lowers, I mean, you're not making money unless you're wrestling.
True, and I mean, and to be fair, a different career point altogether. But playing in a band and being a session guitarist, when I wasn't playing on recordings and I wasn't working in the studio and I wasn't touring, I wasn't making money. I mean, I was making some off the residuals of my album sales, but the real money came from actually being out there playing. And it's the same with writing. If you're writing books, it's kind of a hand-to-mouth job till you start selling the books, and then that's when you're working. So I understand that. And growing up, I had friends that were wrestlers that were into the extreme hardcore stuff. They were pro wrestlers, and I guess what do you call it, NWA and some of the other ones, Mid-South and so on. And I've seen what they do to each other. I got to see them debut some finishing moves out in their training facility in Tennessee when I was with the band. And I saw some of what they did. And suffice to say it, I would never have thought that they would put that much physical exertion and stress on their bodies. And they were young men at the time. We're talking fresh out of high school, maybe 21, 22 at the time. And they were just battling the shit out of their bodies, man.
That's about how old I was whenever I started training in wrestling. Yes, I did, believe it or not. And the surprising thing? The surprising thing about wrestling is, just say somebody throws a punch, and yeah, maybe the punch doesn't hurt. But you know what the fuck hurts really bad? When you hit that mat, because you got to learn how, they say you got to learn how to fall. But every time you hit the mat, it's like a car wreck. Every single time. Even if you know what you're doing.
I have been in them, yeah, and I let them hit me and just barely hit me, and I just kind of flung myself back. I was limping around for the better part of the evening. The way my shoulder hit it. Yeah.
Suffice to say, since, again, the subject's come up, concussions are why I quit. No more concussions, I was done. So I took quite a few in training, and I said, fuck this isn't worth it. So that was the swan song for me with wrestling, and, I've done other things with it since then. So, yeah, next week we'll get a little bit more into it. Again, Victor Andrews will be coming on to talk to us. He actually wrote a horror script, so we've got all sorts of horror-related topics outside of the world of wrestling to talk about, too. And Victor, yeah, he was on, I don't know, less than a month ago, getting beat up by Bobby Lashley while he was dressed up like a woman. It was pretty fucking funny, to be honest with you, and a lot of people got offended about it.
Wow, I didn't even know he was still out there doing his thing.
Yeah, he came back here recently, and not a big fan of Bobby Lashley, but maybe he's a hell of a nice guy. I don't know. I'll ask Victor Andrews about that next week. We've had Victor on back when we did a wrestling podcast, but now that we're back to straight horror and nothing more, then, I haven't talked to him in a while, so it'll be fun to talk to him. It's good to see him getting out there and doing his thing. But I tell you what, I've got a pretty long list of where my horror adventures have taken me, so I'll let you go first, and then I'll get into mine, because that'll cover some ground here while Vic waits to get in. I don't want to get into our list just yet.
Okay. Well, as far as horror adventures have taken me, I've been signed on to do this convention. I've sort of been really promoting and pushing that. There's going to be a huge announcement in the middle of the week about the book. So I can't speak to that yet, but let me just say it's going to be huge. A lot of people don't know it, but Robert Englund has actually done a piece for the book, and he is super excited for the book to come out, and his birthday is tomorrow.
Yeah,
I'm going to wish him a happy birthday. He'll be a very spry, happy, and energetic 71 years old tomorrow. So.
And yet people still want him to play Freddy.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's a different subject altogether, I think. But yeah, so but yeah, so I've been doing a lot of that. I watched a couple of things. I watched Winchester. You know, I kind of have been putting that off and putting that off and putting that off and watched it. You know, people give that movie a lot of hate. I think for what it was, to be a mainstream and have somebody with the likes of Helen Mirren in it, I think it was really well done. There was some CGI, but there was some good practical stuff too.
Let's come back to that. I don't mean to skip over you. I do want to come back to that because I actually saw Winchester too, and Vic's actually called in now. So let's put our horror adventures where we've been on hold, and let's get into our top 10 list since we have a Vic who is no longer MIA. What's up, buddy?
What's up, brother? I'm gonna be working all night, so just bear with me.
All right.
Of course.
So,
good to have you.
Vic, how about you start off with your number 10 to get this thing rolling for us? Remember, everybody, top 10 horror movies of 1982. And by the way, Vic, just to let you know, it's Tequila Tuesday in my house, so I'm pretty fucking intoxicated. And Blake, obviously, he's probably aware.
Yeah,
Blake drunk?
I'm aware. I did not drink this time, but you know, I drank the past 3 shows with you guys, so I think I've made good on that. So.
Yeah, that's like more than you ever drank on the show ever. So.
Even makes funny about it. I do the past 3 nights.
Yeah, I know. And then you're calling when you're working. Oh well, at least you have the commitment to excellence.
Anyway, let's get this shindig started. Let me give it to my list real quick. All right, that's what I thought was number 10. All right, so this is a movie that I actually watched probably about 6-7 years ago on Netflix, back when they played a bunch of cheesy horror movies, and that I actually wanted to watch. So I'm going with Madman as my number 10.
Madman, I own that movie, and it's also on Tubi right now, Vic.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And I'll just let you guys in on a little secret. That was one of the movies I watched over the last 2 weeks. I didn't go into the movies I had watched last week just because I did true crime and then I cut out. But yes, Madman was one of the ones I watched just to kind of refresh myself because I'd only seen it one time. So Madman is Vic's number 10. I like it. And does it surprise anybody that Vic kicks things off with a slasher? Maybe not, because you'd think it'd be even higher because, you know, it's Vic's list after all. That means that Blake is going to be up next with his number 10.
Okay. I appreciate it. That was good number 10, Vic. That's not one that I would have thought that you would have picked. But again, that's another reason I love these shows is because we see just exactly how far we cover the spectrum of this. So I'm sure I was telling Travis before the show started that you guys will probably hate some of my choices. You may just hate some of the placement, but I think overall you'll probably like the list and you know in general. But my number 10 is one that probably not a lot of people have seen. It's obviously it's 1982 and it's not one that's on a lot of radar. It's Parasite, Charles Band. It's a good movie. It's actually one of the few scary films that has Demi Moore in it. So.
Damn, she was young then.
Well, yeah, and I mean Charles Band, you know, he came to prominence with Puppet Master films and Subspecies and, you know, all that good stuff. So, I mean, you kind of have it's just this really cheesy but good, distinctly 1980s feel to it, you know.
I get the feeling, and I could be wrong, but I get the feeling that, like, our lower half of our top 10 is probably going to be all over the place just because 1982 was really fucking odd. It wasn't like 81, and Blake and I were saying this, I don't remember if it was before the show or during. No, it was during the show. I mean, this is literally how I am now. But that 1981 was all about the Friday the 13th ripoffs, but 1982 really didn't have that many. There were a couple, but not that many. So it's kind of interesting to go in a different direction on this. Well, we all have different number 10s, and my number 10 is one that I literally just watched over the last 2 weeks. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's a French film, and I know that's surprising. And I watched it over the last 2 weeks, and it is from 1982. It's also known as, I think, La Morte Vivante. This is a 1982 French horror movie, and it is fucking weird. I can't figure out whether it's a vampire movie or a zombie movie or both, but it's kind of awesome because there's a lot of nudity, and there's also a lot of like